Greetings, everyone. It's so nice to be with you today. I am especially excited about today's teleconference because we are going to be reviewing some very inspiring articles in the latest issue of the Rosicrucian Digest. In fact, we created the theme for this digest so that we could share a few of these articles in particular. And we're also going to have an opportunity for you to write something and share it yourself. So we'll begin. I'll share my screen here. Give me just a second. Okay, so this is the cover of the latest issue of the Rosicrucian Digest that was just published, and it celebrates Rosicrucian writers, especially modern writers. And this is available online at rosicrucian.org/Rosicrucian-digest. And all of the Rosicrucian Digest magazines are available for free online. And you can find it with this specific URL. You can also find it and all of the texts that the order publishes by going to rosicrucian.org. And then at the top there, you see it says text. And then there's a drop-down menu. It says Rosicrucian Digest. And that's where you'll find this issue. And then if you want to see every digest that the Rosicrucian order has published over the last 100 years, you choose the next item in the drop-down box, which is Rosicrucian Digest Archive. But this one is in that one above that says Rosicrucian Digest. And the cover is the Rosicrucian Research Library. Many of you have visited Rosicrucian Park and experienced this magnificent collection that we have. The Rosicrucian Research Library was built in 1939. Ralph Lewis really wanted a permanent place for the order's growing collection of books. So he worked with his brother, Earl Lewis, who was an architect, and they designed our research library. And shortly after that, H. Spencer Lewis went through transition, and he bequeathed his entire collection of books to the Rosicrucian Research Library. And that was the core of the library to begin. And now we have this magnificent collection of rare books and manuscripts on esoteric topics, including the original Rosicrucian manifestos that were published in 1614, 15, and 16. So in the rare books room, we have the Fama Fraternitatis, the Confessio Fraternitatis, and the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz, as well as many other important first edition books by mystics like Jakob Böhme. We have Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin's entire collection from first edition collection written in French, his language. We have books by Isaac Newton and Robert Flood and Michael Meyer, many original and signed books by H. Spencer Lewis, and some other folks who we're going to be discussing in today's teleconference. So come with me on this journey. I'm just so excited to be sharing some of these jewels, these treasures from our modern Rosicrucian writers. So the first article in the digest is by our imperator, Claudia Mazzucco, and it's entitled The Rosicrucian Spiritual Tradition in a Modern World. That's the title of the first article. And here is just one excerpt from that article. We, Rosicrucians of the 21st century, are more than ever convinced that education can truly save humanity from its own entrapments. In an etymological sense of the word, education, as mentioned earlier, ensures that people discover within themselves true knowledge, recognizing in their fellow humans as they recognize in themselves and the universe divine nature in action, expressing all the potentiality of the soul that manifests in all people. I encourage you to read the entire article, and this is for each of these authors. I chose what I thought were excerpts that expressed what they were most trying to communicate in their article. But you may read the articles and find something else stands out for you. So again, this is the first article, and it's the Rosicrucian Spiritual Tradition in a Modern World. The next article is by H. Spencer Lewis, the co-founder and first imperator of AMWORK. And this article that I'm going to share a small excerpt with you is the main reason that we published on this theme. This is from a manuscript that H. Spencer Lewis wrote that succinctly sums up the Rosicrucian approach to manifesting things in our lives and in the world. And this is really at the core of so many of the Rosicrucian monographs and teachings. So the article is entitled "The Law of Assumption." And here is just a short excerpt from this article. Undoubtedly, each one of you know of some person who represents your ideals of happiness, contentment, and health. First, we should create in our minds the picture of a person who is happy, healthy, has a comfortable home nicely located in a peaceful location, with a happy, contented group of loved ones, and with moderate but dependable income. Then, after creating such an ideal in your mind, use the principles of assumption to assume that you are gradually becoming that ideal person. And for hours of each day, go about your affairs with the mental assumption that you actually are the ideal person you have pictured. In carrying out this assumption of such an ideal character, day after day for some weeks, you will soon find that you are creating around you an environment and attracting to your surroundings the same prosperous, happy, contented conditions that you visualize. You will find that you are actually creating the very things that you have wanted. H. Spencer Lewis spells out all the steps in this article. And again, the title of the article is The Law of Assumption. This is a photo of Ralph Lewis, our imperator from 1939 until very late in the 20th century. And this is in his personal library. He also was an avid collector of books. And again, at the Rosicrucian Research Library was inspired by his deep desire to have a permanent home for the extraordinary collection of the research library of the Rosicrucian order. And he wrote an article called Our Mission in Life. And here is a short excerpt from that. The question really before us is, which is the right mission? The ideal or the obligation? Presuming that we have both. The answer to this would probably be the intermediate way, striving reasonably to meet a reasonable obligation and alike to seek to attain the ideal. The next article is by our immediate past imperator, Christian Bernard, who was the imperator of the order from 1990 until his retirement in 2019. And this is a photo of him at the 2015 AMARC World Convention at Rosicrucian Park. Some of you might be in that photo there with thousands of members at Rosicrucian Park. It was just so beautiful. And here is an excerpt from his very timely article entitled "The Influence of the News." Each person should strive to transmute the pessimism that currently predominates into an optimism based on a coherent yet confident analysis of events. Whenever, therefore, we have the chance to speak with others about the news, no matter whether that pertains to the local, national, or international outlets, we should always endeavor to highlight those aspects that show, beyond how it may appear, that the world is evolving towards ideals more and more humanistic in nature. At the same time, we should pause and send out positive thought forms to all those who are suffering, either physically or psychologically. The next article in this issue of the Digest is entitled "The Oracles of Delphi." And I shared this article. I'm fascinated by the women who served as oracles in ancient Greece and also in Egypt and other parts of the world, but especially those who thrived and guided Greece for thousands of years from Delphi. Imagine a culture that celebrates women as fonts of wisdom. Imagine a tradition that values more than just intellectual ways of knowing, such as synchronicities and dreams and intuition. Imagine teachers who encourage their students to anticipate the path ahead, not to just look for an immediate solution. Imagine a sage who requires the inquirer to participate in his or her inquiry in order to evoke deeper learning. Imagine shamanesses who invite us to be all we can be. Imagine that. The next article in the digest was written by Frater Lonnie Edwards, MD, who recently went through transition, and he was just such an important part of the order and the English Grand Lodge. He served as the vice president of our board of directors for many years. He was a frequent speaker. He wrote really the modern book on Rosicrucianism, spiritual laws that govern humanity and the universe. And the article that we shared is called "Commitment to the Soul." Frater Lonnie wrote, "Recognize love and beauty as the sole essence of all existence, the most dynamic and healing forces in the universe. Learn to see and sense these all around you on your path. Actively choose to have this love govern how you deal with people, places, and conditions. Engender a true soul commitment and experience true inner peace." And Frater Lonnie's article ends with a meditation on expressing and sharing this love. The next article is by Frater Edward Lee, who was an RCUI instructor and presenter and a class master at the Grand Lodge for many decades. I spoke to Frater Ed not too long ago, and he sends everyone his greetings. He still has that same beautiful voice and just that lilt in his voice, and he really expresses his beautiful energy. He wrote a book called Practical Mysticism, and he said that he chose to share what's in the book because when he served as a class master for many decades, when he presented programs to members and non-members, he found that a lot of non-members had similar questions to what members would have, and he wanted to share the information with as many people as possible. And here's an excerpt from the chapter that he wrote on problem solving, on the way to approach solving problems. He wrote, problem-solving activity falls broadly into two categories. One emphasizes simple trial and error. The other requires some degree of what is sometimes referred to as insight. The next article is by Frater Lee Irwin, who was a professor of religious studies for many decades. He recently presented one of our teleconferences, and he's an expert on native traditions and dreaming. And the title of his article in the Rosicrucian Digest is Dream Psychohistory. Again, this is Frater Lee Irwin, PhD. Psychohistory is not passive, but interactive, reflexive of all my relations, and intimately expressive of our individual and collective lived world choices. Dreams prompt alterity and challenge the status quo. They undermine collective attitudes. Dreaming opens multiple pathways, and what we choose, enact, and embody is the memorable history of our psychic life. And this article that he wrote on the profundity of dreams and the importance that dreams can have in our life is just fascinating and inspiring. The next article is by Nicholas Roerich, who was a personal friend of H. Spencer Lewis. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in protecting cultural items, art, and other objects, especially during war. He was a prolific writer. He was the Rosicrucian Order's legate or liaison in the Himalayas. He was a painter, just really, he and his wife were just two fascinating people. And this is a portrait of him by his son. We chose to share an excerpt from a writing by Nicholas Roerich entitled Shambhala the Resplendent. And it talks about, he's speaking with a lama in the story, and the lama is talking about Shambhala as it exists on another plane. And Nicholas Roerich says, but there is a place somewhere in the world. Can you tell us more about that? So he asks the Lama about it, and sometimes this is referred to as Shangri-La. And so the Lama shares a little bit about how you could find this paradise on earth. And he also talks about its reality, about how things are changing. So the Lama writes in this story, in all countries, the covenants of Buddha shall be manifested. Really, Great things are coming. You come from the west, yet you are bringing news of Shambhala. We must take it verily so. The next Rosicrucian writer who is featured is Elbert Hubbard, and he too was a close personal friend of H. Spencer Lewis and was involved in the establishment of the order in 1915. And he promised to be more involved when he returned from a trip from Europe. He was the founder, he and his wife, Alice, were the founders of the Roycrofter movement, the arts and craft movement. And he went to Europe, and unfortunately they were on the ship, the Lusitania, that was torpedoed and sank, and they died on board the ship before they could return and be more involved in the establishment of AMWARC. And Elbert Hubbard wrote many books, and he wrote a beautiful essay called Kindergarten of God. And this one sentence really sums up the whole article for me. I think you'll find it very interesting. Do your work as well as you can and be kind. That's the best way to get along here. And it is the best preparation for a life to come, if there is one. The next author in this digest is Marie Corelli, and she was a British authoress. She wrote many, many novels, and she was Queen Victoria's favorite novelist. Winston Churchill had her entire collection in his library. She was very involved with H. Spencer Lewis in the founding of AMWARC. And she wrote a book that we took an excerpt from that's called Lead Kindly Light. And it tells a story of a scientist who's trying to understand his spirituality. Here's the excerpt. We seek to know too much, and in the arrogance of our knowledge, we lose the great ideal. And so we miss the way to happiness, both for ourselves and others. We must learn to be wise in time, lest we destroy the whole fabric of our hopes and all the beauty of belief. Our next featured Rosicrucian author is Dennis William Houck, PhD. Frater Dennis was the curator of the Rosicrucian Alchemy exhibit that's on display in the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum. And he has taught many alchemy workshops and contributed many articles on alchemy to the Rose Quad Journal, to the Rosicrucian Digest. And he wrote this beautiful paper, including meditations, for the Rose Quad Journal. And the name of this paper is Searching for the Cosmic Quintessence, How Alchemists Meditated in the Middle Ages and Renaissance. And here's the excerpt. Ora et labora was not just another saying of the alchemist. It was their secret formula for uniting the inner and outer worlds to open a new dimension of reality that remains hidden from our modern culture and science. For the alchemists, this was not just a spiritual dimension, but a unique marriage of mind and matter that was the source of physical as well as spiritual transformations. And again, we have recordings of the meditation that goes along with this on how alchemists meditated in the Middle Ages and Renaissance. The last Rosicrucian writer who's featured in this digest is Ella Wheeler Wilcox, who was a writer and a poet and a mystic. She was very involved with the founding of AMARC. I chose this photo because she wrote that this was her favorite photo of herself. She was very well known in America. She and Marie Corelli were celebrities of their time. Everyone was familiar with their names. And again, Ella Wheeler Wilcox was also very involved with starting the Rosicrucian order. And we featured 2 poems by her. The first one is called Which Are You? And this is just an excerpt. It's a little bit longer than this. Wherever you go, you will find the earth's masses are always divided in just these 2 classes. And oddly enough, you will find 2, I ween, there's only one lifter to 20 who lean. In which class are you? Are you easing the load of overtaxed lifters who toil down the road? Or are you a leaner who lets others share your portion of labor and worry and care? And then the final text in this issue of the digest is Solitude. And again, the poem is longer than this, but many people are familiar with the lines, laugh and the world laughs with you. Weep and you weep alone. For the sad old earth must borrow its mirth, but has trouble enough of its own. So that's the summary of this issue of the digest. And again, I really hope that you have some time to read all of these articles, the complete articles, and you find everything online at rosicrucian.org. Then you go to texts, and all of the Rosicrucian publications are available for free. All of our books are published for free, all of the Rosicrucian Digest, right back to the first one over 100 years ago now. So now we're going to move to the next part of what we're doing today, and I'm so excited about this. At the end of the introduction to this Rosicrucian Digest, I mentioned that I hope that these articles inspire us as Rosicrucians, and for those who are inclined to do so, may inspire you to write something yourself. So we're going to experiment with that today. And I invite you, please, to find a piece of paper and something to write with. I'm suggesting that you not write on your computer or on your phone. We're going to do it a little bit differently. So if you can grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil or whatever you're inspired to grab, and we're going to first meditate, and then we're going to see what you may be inspired to share. So again, if you would have your paper and pencil or pen handy, and we are going to explore writing an article. After I wrote that for the introduction to the digest, a member sent me something that he was inspired to write. And I thought, if we get enough of these, we can publish an entire digest with articles from members. And I'll give you the theme in a few minutes. So that's what we're preparing for. And the magazine will be the Rosicrucian Digest. Your audience will be Rosicrucian members, primarily. Other people read the digest too, but it will be mostly our fellow fratres and sorors. And then we're going to choose our perspective, and that's what I'm going to tell you in a moment. So to prepare ourselves, please sit in whatever way is most comfortable for you, and take 3 deep breaths, becoming more relaxed with each exhalation. Now, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to focus on our breath. It's a very simple meditation. You can breathe with your mouth closed and just breathe in and out of your nose and feel the air as it goes in and out of your nostrils. Or you may find that you can go deeper if you breathe in through your nose, and when you exhale, you make the exhalation longer. And you may even find it's helpful to purse your lips. So you would breathe in through your nose and then out through pursed lips for as long as the exhalation is comfortable. And as you do that, count. So you'll breathe in, and on the first exhalation, you're mentally thinking 1. Breathe in again. The next exhalation, again with your lips pursed or however is most comfortable for you. Now you think 2, and you count up to 10. When you get to 10, you do it all over again, 1 to 10. So you'll probably go through this a couple of times. I'll keep track of the time. So just gently focus on your breath. If your mind wanders, no problem. Just bring it back to your breath. And you may even find it helpful to just think to yourself, thinking. That way you're just naming. It's like thinking, and then go back to focusing on your breath. So do that with your eyes closed, and I will keep track of the time for us. Now, stay in your meditative state, but breathe normally. So go back to regular breathing, but notice that you're still in your meditative state. Now open your eyes and pick up your pen or pencil, have your paper there, and write one true sentence about your experience on the Rosicrucian path. Now write another true sentence about your experience on the Rosicrucian path. You may find it easy to write these sentences if you need a little help. Maybe it could be something like, one true sentence is, I appreciate being in the company of like-minded people. Or the first time I truly felt like I was a Rosicrucian was when, and then when was that? Or it could be, I learned that what I thought I knew about whatever was wrong. Write one more true sentence about your experience on the Rosicrucian path. Now choose one of these. Maybe you can circle it and you'll turn your paper over, or you can use a separate piece of paper and write that sentence in the middle of the piece of paper. And for those of you who aren't Rosicrucians, you may have learned something. You may have an experience on the Rosicrucian path. Perhaps a loved one is a Rosicrucian, or if not, choose on your mystical path. So now choose one of those sentences, and you're going to create a mind map. So you write that sentence and then write around it how that felt, why you feel that this is true. It can just be words or feelings. You can draw images. So write related thoughts around that, or you can just start writing. Add on to that one true sentence. We'll take a couple of minutes to do this. This is not technical or academic. You want others to get a feel for what you experienced or learned, for this truth. Be sure to include where you might experience this in your body. Maybe it's how you breathe when you think about it. This will be your starting point. You can continue to add notes and to edit. And again, if you want to create a work of art or a poem or a song, you can share a video. If you would like to submit your article or your artwork or whatever it is, you can send this to instruction@rosicrucian.org. And we'll look and see if we have enough material to make this the focus of a Rosicrucian Digest. And if you could send that again to Rosicrucian, instruction@rosicrucian.org, you could submit it by March 5th. That gives you 2 months. Again, we're not looking for a technical paper or an academic paper. The reason that I suggested that we start with one true sentence is because one of my favorite writers is Ernest Hemingway. He wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is one of my absolute favorite books, The Old Man and the Sea. And here are some excerpts of what he wrote to friends. He never wrote a book on Here's How You Write, but he wrote letters to people. And he wrote a book called A Movable Feast about living in Paris and writing. And he said, sometimes when I was starting a new story and I could not get it going, I would stand and look out over the roofs of Paris and think, do not worry. All you have to do is write one true sentence and then go on from there. It was easy then because there was always one true sentence that I knew or had seen or had heard someone say. Then he continues, I found the greatest difficulty, aside from knowing truly what you felt, rather than what you were supposed to feel and had been taught to feel, was to put down what really happened in action, what the actual things were which produced the emotion that you experienced. So for your one true sentence, I imagine that you chose this because it had some meaning to you and probably associated emotion. So Ernest Hemingway wrote, you see, I'm trying in all my stories to get the feeling of the actual life across, not to just depict it or criticize it, but to actually make it alive, so that when you have read something by me, you actually experience the thing. You can't do this without putting in the bad and the ugly as well as the beautiful. Because if it is all beautiful, you can't believe in it. So maybe you find that you can believe in it being all beautiful. So in The Old Man and the Sea, here is a small excerpt of how you can really get a feel for the character. And this is not a spoiler. You probably know something about the book, that there's a mature man who catches a huge fish and he's trying to bring it in. And Ernest Hemingway writes, he felt faint again now, but he held on the great fish all the strain that he could. I moved him, he thought. Maybe this time I can get him over. Pull, hands, he thought. Hold up, legs. Last for me, head, last for me. You never went. This time I'll pull him over. He took all his pain and what was left of his strength and his long gone pride, and he put it against the fish's agony. So again, I invite you to write your one true sentence and share so the other person can feel what it was that you felt when you experienced this. I think about, I, like probably every woman who was a kid when I was, at least in the United States, loved the film The Sound of Music when I was a kid. And I felt like I was a member of the Von Trapp family. I didn't think, oh, how nice for those Von Trapp kids. It was like I was part of their family. It was like I was experiencing it. It was the same thing with Mary Poppins, that I wanted to know someone like the nanny with magical powers. It wasn't like I was thinking, oh, how good for the Banks children. It was like, wow, that would be so fantastic to experience what was experienced in the story. So again, you may have a gift, and I know many of you who are very talented writers and artists and poets, and I even know some songwriters and people who create videos. So we want to do something different with this issue of the Rosicrucian Digest. And this is your invitation to participate in that. So let me give you just a few guidelines that will be helpful, because we're not able to edit your submission for you. It needs to be publication quality. Don't send us a draft. And we use the Chicago Manual of Style in the Rosicrucian Digest. So you can do a quick search on how to professionally submit an article for publication. And if you'd send that to instruction@rosicrucian.org, instruction@rosicrucian.org, we will acknowledge that we received it. And if we're going to publish your article, we'll get back to you, or your artwork, whatever it is. So we'll let you know that we received it, but we won't let you know if we're not going to be in a position to use it in the digest. We have found that 1,700 words is a good maximum for the length of articles in the Rosicrucian Digest. So 1,700 words is a good maximum length. If you're sending artwork, please send it in low resolution. And then if it's something that we want to publish, we'll ask you to send the high resolution later. Please don't send high resolution. It probably won't make it through. And we just need to see what it looks like. We're especially interested in artwork for the cover. Now, if you've written an article, maybe you want to submit your own artwork as well, but we're looking for a cover for the Rosicrucian Digest. And again, you're invited to submit poetry, a video, song, whatever it is that tells the truth about your experience on the Rosicrucian path. And again, the truth could be that you thought something was one way, but the truth is it wasn't that way. So we're not looking for anyone, we're not looking for an article that shows that you're brilliant. We're looking for an article that shows your humanity, that shows that we're fratres and sorors in this together, and that some of us have insight sometimes, and some of us learn other things sometimes. So I can just hardly wait to see what you all will be submitting. And again, the deadline is March 5th. That gives us enough time that we can review everything and get this. We don't know if it'll be the first or second issue of this year, but we're going to publish it right away if we receive enough materials. So if you've never professionally published in a magazine, this is a great opportunity. And some of you are have published a lot, have written books, have had art shows and all kinds of exciting things. So everyone is invited to participate in this. So that concludes our review of the Rosicrucian Digest featuring modern Rosicrucian writers. And I hope you have a chance to read all of the articles. And thank you all so much for participating today.